Hi there, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie. I'm a registered dietitian and sport nutritionist. On this channel, we talk about everything related to sport and sport nutrition and how to use food to positively affect your performance. In this video, we are talking all about how we can use our post-workout time to make sure that we're eating and drinking what we should be so that we can make sure that we are recovering to the best of our ability to make sure that we're ready for our next exercise session. There are 3 R's that I want you to be thinking about. The first is recover, the second is repair, and the third is rehydrate. The first R is refuel. The reason why this is number 1 on our list is to make sure that we are putting back in the fuel that we use during our activity. Again, during high intensity activity, we are using mostly carbohydrates that we want to be replacing in our post-workout. A good amount of carbohydrates that you might want to be including in your post-workout plan would be about 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. For example, if you're a 60-kilogram athlete, you would want to consume about 60 grams of carbohydrate after your workout to make sure that we're starting off that process of recovery. 60 grams of carbohydrate might look like a piece of naan with an apple, or you could do 1 1/3 cups of rice or pasta with other things to make sure that we are packing those muscles with enough of the carbohydrate to refuel. As we know, there are multiple types of carbohydrates that we could be consuming. We tend to break them up into simple versus complex carbohydrates, or you can also talk about them in terms of the glycemic index. So a high glycemic index food will break down and release that sugar into the system more quickly in comparison to those that are lower on the GI scale, so things that release a little bit more slowly. So the comparison there would be something like brown rice versus minute rice, white bread versus our whole grain bread. And research actually does show that more of those higher glycemic types of carbohydrates after your workout are helpful to actually accelerate and improve your recovery time because we have more carbohydrates getting into the muscle more quickly after our training. Some other examples of foods that you could consume after your workout that are a little bit higher on that glycemic index or GI scale would be a banana with some honey, some instant oatmeal, or simply just having white rice. There seems to be a small anabolic window for timing of carbohydrates after your post-workout, which means there's a short amount of time that you have to take advantage of a faster input of carbohydrates from the bloodstream into the muscles, which in turn can increase the rate of the carbohydrate or glycogen recovery in that muscle. This is going to speed up your recovery time because if you can store more carbohydrates in that first part, then you have a better chance of fully recovering those glycogen stores for the next session. This window becomes really important if you have 2 workouts in a day or if you are training daily. However, the window that you're taking in those carbohydrates becomes potentially less important if you are training every other day or every 3rd day. The reason for that is with normal meals and snacks, if you're eating an adequate diet in carbohydrates, you will naturally replenish those carbohydrate stores within 24 to 48 hours, although sometimes it can take even longer, up to 72 hours. There was a study that showed that it did take about 72 hours for elite soccer players to fully recover their glycogen stores after an intense game. So if we want to be showing up to our training fully fueled, we need to take advantage of that 30-minute window after our training to make sure that we get in that carbohydrate. Second thing on the list is to repair your muscles. So we all know that protein is really important for our muscle maintenance and growth. So we want to make sure that we have some protein in our post-workout to make sure that we are doing just that. We've probably heard that about 20 grams is roughly enough to make sure that we are stimulating the muscle to grow and rebuild itself and repair itself. However, this is really going to be dependent on how big you are as an athlete. Those that are smaller, the 20 grams might be a little bit too much, and then those that are on the larger end of the scale might actually not get enough benefit from a 20-gram dose. So what we can do is actually calculate how much we might need as an individual. On average, we are looking at 0.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if we take that 60-kilogram athlete, we times that by 0.3, and we see that about 18 grams, or roughly 20 grams, of protein is going to be adequate to make sure that we are stimulating our muscles to grow and repair. In the nutrition world, it's pretty well known that A whey protein is actually the best choice in terms of maxing out your ability to build muscles. So it turns on muscle protein synthesis really efficiently after your workout. That's because it has high branch chain amino acids in it, specifically leucine, but it's also really quickly and easily digested in the body versus a soy or even a casein type of protein where they break down more slowly. The amino acids or those building blocks of protein get into the system more slowly, so we see a little bit less of a raise in the ability to turn on that muscle protein building. Overall, when we look and compare long-term studies of a vegetarian or vegan style of diet compared to a meat-eating diet that would include more of the whey proteins that max out our ability to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, is that we actually see the same amount of muscle protein building capacity over time if we are allowing our body to have enough of those essential amino acids and also making sure that we have a good leucine content. So if we're looking for high leucine content, most of our protein powders will have the amino acids listed, and so we can look at how much leucine is in each serving of protein powder that we're using. If we're using real food, 4 ounces or about 100 grams of a meat such as chicken, steak, or salmon will be adequate enough to have that 3-gram dose of our leucine. If we're on the vegetarian end of the scale, to make sure that we get about 3 grams of leucine in our post-workout, we could choose 1 cup of tofu, or we could choose 1.5 cups of oats or edamame. Another aspect to muscle recovery is actually making sure that our muscles physically feel recovered. So that means maybe potentially decreasing the inflammation and that delayed onset of muscle soreness. Research has shown that omega-3 or tart cherry juice can be helpful to reduce that muscle soreness post-workout. Another aspect that we could be considering is if we're taking creatine. So creatine can be helpful for our muscle recovery, our performance if we are more of an explosive style of athlete. It can also help us grow and build muscle if that is our goal. Research does show that if we take that creatine around our workouts, so either before or after, we get a little bit of a better benefit in terms of our muscle building capacity. So having that supplement after our training is actually going to be a little bit more beneficial. We might not want to have it before just because sometimes that creatine can give us some GI issues, so some bloating or feeling uncomfortable during our training, so we might want to put it after our workout. Previously, it was really pushed that you needed protein right after your training to make sure that you are getting the most out of your protein doses after your workouts. What we know now is that what's more important, again, is the amount of protein and the protein distribution throughout the day. Last but certainly not least, we want to rehydrate. So we want to make sure that we are sipping on fluids after our training so that we are replacing the sweat and fluid that we lost, but also replacing what we are going to be losing through urine losses and continuing sweating after our training sessions. The go-to number is 150% of what you sweat out. So if we're looking at losing 1 kilogram of body weight during our training, we are going to be replacing that after our workout is done with 1.5 liters of liquid in that time. The best way to retain that fluid is to make sure that we eat it with solid food, have some carbohydrates and proteins in that, and then also we're looking at adding some salt to retain and absorb that fluid. So let's think of some examples of what a post-workout meal could look like. If we are going to focus on having the carbs, the protein, and the liquid, we could think of a smoothie. So we could have some whey protein with maybe a little bit of Greek yogurt. We could add some milk in there and some fruit like banana to make sure that we are getting a good amount of carbohydrates, protein, and liquid all in one. Depending on what you're mixing into your smoothie, it might not be high enough in carbohydrates, so you could always add some oats in there or some sweet potato, or you could also have something on the side to make sure that you're adding some extra carbohydrates. Another example could be shredded chicken with some rice in a wrap, or you could do tofu and rice. You could also do a sandwich, so if you had a bagel with some meat on it with some cheese, that would give you enough protein and carbohydrates, and then we're adding some sort of a liquid to that as well, whether that is a sport drink or a glass of milk or some water. If you don't have enough time to pack a full meal that you can consume right after your training, at minimum you want to make sure you're packing some easy and quick carbohydrates. So for example, you could take a fig bar, naan bread, some granola bars, applesauce, juice, dried fruit, overnight oats work really well as well. So that is it for this video. Hopefully you found that helpful and learned something new, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!